So today we're going to talk about an extremely vile and incredibly powerful villain who was a disgusting human being even before he had superpowers. Meet Carl King, also known as Thousand. He appeared in only 3 issues of the comics, but even within that small amount of time, he accomplished enough mischief. To get a complete picture, it's important to start from the beginning. Carl had known Peter since he was a little boy. The tall, strong, and fat jerk constantly insulted him. And he didn't do it like Flash Thompson and his boys. They also liked to give someone a sound thrashing and mock the nerds, but still did not overstep the bounds of permissible. Carl King did whatever he could think of. He could just beat Peter or stick his head in the toilet, forcing him to swallow water mixed with urine. Parker was forced to do all the housework for his abuser, but only received bruises and abrasions as gratitude. Carl also took away all his money and sometimes his clothes. Peter's personal belongings, glasses, notebooks, books, were systematically destroyed for fun. There were more brutal moments. A fat bully could drag the future Spider-Man to a bridge and throw him into the water, threaten him with a knife, inflict minor wounds, and sometimes even force him to eat dog feces. Any attempts to resist would result in injuries and a trip to the hospital. You may ask why such a freak was not detained by the police or at least reprimanded by his teachers. Aunt May had complained about Carl many times, but when he was called to the principal's office, there were no witnesses to confirm his violence toward the other students and, of course, toward Peter. The other children were afraid of the huge and dumb bully and therefore didn't dare talk about his actions. For some reason, though, Carl thought that this behavior showed that everyone liked what he was doing and that everyone loved him. That's the timeless problem when might go before right. By the way, Carl didn't have any friends either. No one wanted anything to do with a scumbag like himself. In general, Parker had to tolerate the mentioned abuse and other mockery from kindergarten to high school, up to the moment when he was bitten by a radioactive spider. By the way, we'll get to that moment now, as it plays a key role in today's story. Going to a science fair, Carl witnesses the very same spider biting Peter. Rejoicing at what had happened and seeing that Parker was not well, the bully followed him, hoping to enjoy the suffering of the nerd. Who knows, maybe the whipping boy would have gotten popped off along the way. That would have been fun. Instead, however, Carl witnessed a strange sight. Peter jumped 3 meters up, escaping from a passing car. Not believing his eyes, King began to follow the nerd, watching his incredible metamorphosis and adventures. That's why, when Spider-Man appeared, Carl knew who was hiding behind the hero's mask. The more he watched, the more envious he became of what he saw. How so? A weak, worthless asshole suddenly had such amazing power. It should have gone to him. With each passing day, his envy grew bigger and bigger. Carl began to think that Parker was living his life, that he was taking his glory, fighting his villains, weaving his web. Being strong but dumb, the bully decided that if the radioactive spider gave Peter such abilities, then it could do the same with him. All he had to do was find him. Breaking into the science fair building at night, he managed to find the spider. Unfortunately, the animal was already dead. However, after doing the equation, Carl concluded that he could become superhuman simply by eating the find. At first, he didn't notice any changes, but one day his entire body was crawling with spiders. They numbered exactly 1,000. As a consequence, the villain's name changed accordingly. All his insides were gone, and all that was left of Carl was his skin. He had no idea what he had become, but it was obvious that his consciousness had been transferred into spiders. The first victim of the reborn hooligan was his own mother. He killed her unconsciously. In the morning, she called him for breakfast as per usual. Then Carl grabbed her by the arms, and spiders from his mouth began to move into the woman's mouth. It took several hours for the insides to liquefy completely, but soon the son was in his mother's body. By the way, the spiders destroyed and devoured everything except skin and teeth. Even the skeleton was recycled. Spiders, on the other hand, replaced the eyes and tongue, spreading over the body according to size. With each new victim, the processing went a little faster, and Carl himself became a little stronger, tougher, and more agile. He was taking great pleasure in the process. No wonder that the next victim was his father, and after that his girlfriend. Then came the homeless and sometimes children, whom he couldn't stand. The most frightening thing was that the skin of those killed acquired unusual properties. It did not deteriorate over time and became quite tough. This was enough to withstand the spiders placed inside, but it was powerless against heavy physical force. In a few years, Carl succeeded in eating a decent number of people, and as a consequence, acquired an impressive set of suits. The only goal in Thousand's life was to destroy Parker and capture his body. Having eaten a sufficient number of people and thereby bringing the indicators of strength and agility to incredible values, Carl began to plan the murder of Peter. Once inside the Daily Bugle building at night, he devoured J. Jonah Jameson's assistant, Miss Jess Patton. In the guise of a girl Peter knew, he, or more accurately, she, supposedly bumped into him at night on the street. After making up a story about an evil guy who threw her out on the street, Carl asked to go to Parker's apartment just for a sleepover. Once there, Thousand attacked his opponent. Pretty quickly, the fight moved to the street, where a monster in the guise of Miss Patton was able to take Spider-Man out by paralyzing him with his venomous bite. Peter regained consciousness in his apartment. Carl, anticipating an imminent victory, as befits any dumb villain, told about all his adventures and plans. Thereupon he proceeded to murder his enemy. However, the triumph was overshadowed by the appearance of the landlord, Mr. Ambrose. Since Carl didn't need witnesses, he quickly devoured the man, changing his shell. By this point, Parker had almost fully recovered and was able to attack his opponent. Unfortunately, Thousand's physical capabilities surpassed the Spidey's, and Peter was quickly reduced to a sloppy mess. Eager to finish Parker off, Carl threw the strongest punch he could but missed and hit the Transformer. At this very moment, a powerful electric shock turned all the spiders into overcooked scraps. By the way, killing the Thousand was not exactly an easy task. Even if there is only one spider left, it can attack small animals first and then humans, increasing its strength and quantity in the process. In theory, this makes Carl immortal. Unfortunately for him, the spiders themselves are not strong enough and can be easily destroyed outside the shell. The most ironic part of this whole story was the fact that Carl was jealous of Peter and wanted to be just as famous. However, in the end, he died, and no one ever got to know of his existence except for Parker himself. That's all I have for today. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like the video.